Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is a very brief review of the 2013 World Chess Championship match between reigning champion Viswanathan Anand and challenger Magnus Carlsen. And for the most part, we'll simply show the moves of each of these games with some comments along the way. This was a best of 12 round match played in Chennai, India in November of 2013, and it was a race to 6.5 points. If any one of these games piques your interest, feel free to check out the link I'll provide to the right of the board, and there you can see a more thorough commentary. So this first game had Carlsen with the white pieces, electing the ready opening, and well, similar to what we can find maybe in a boxing match, a lot of feeling out of an opponent in this one. That's the early phase of this match, what essentially went on, and at the end of this game one, we had a perpetual attack against that white queen, this one here ending peacefully after 16 moves in about an hour and a half's worth of play. Game 2 was interesting such that we saw the Caro-Kann defense by Carlsen, not too common at top level of play. We go down a main line, and at the end of this one we have opposite sides castling, which is usually an indication that we'll be attacking one another's king, but soon enough what we see is that there are simply too many pieces being exchanged, and the most powerful one, the queen, comes off. There is some threat being generated here against the black side, but it is simply dodged with the black king bouncing back and forth, avoiding bishop takes h6, and this here also ending peacefully after 25 moves and about an hour and 5 minutes worth of play. This game here turned out to be the shortest of the entire match. Game 3, without a doubt, of the first three was the most exciting. We once again see the ready, but with c4 inserted, we have an imbalance with regard to the pawn structure, white having a 2-to-1 majority in the center, but it was black who was the side who was pressing in this game for a great portion of the game. And after the match, it was Carlsen who said that he sensed that Anand was also nervous in this one, and well, we end up having Carlsen's queen getting kicked around. And why exactly was Anand nervous? I'm not sure why he thought that. It might have been maybe around this point where there was an opportunity to take on b2, but chose maybe a more reserved option of bishop d4. At the end of this, we end up seeing opposite color bishop ending, and not long off from here, I think around this point, Anand offered a draw, but it was declined, and well, the result is not going to change. It does in fact turn out to be a draw, but only after all mating material has been exchanged off the board. In this one, this position ended up getting stripped down to opposite color bishops like so. Of course, this one here is also going to be a draw. So 3 games so far, 3 draws. Game 4 was a very, very tense one. We saw Anand choosing the Ruy Lopez. We have Carlsen electing the Berlin defense, and the queens come off the board. This here was a game which was a very long fight, and a great amount of accuracy was played on white side. Very brave play on the white side to do something very reminiscent to 1972 match, Fischer-Spassky, grabbing that rook pawn. It seems like the bishop is trapped, but it's able to just sneak away and return home. And although black is up a pawn, is getting now rocked back, and what we see is the whole chessboard being made use of in this one. King side, queen side, as well as the center. A lot of pressure being placed on black for having grabbed that pawn. And now the white king getting very active. White here being down 2 pawns, getting one of them back. Super active king. At the end of this, white at this point is now looking for a single rook endgame, which will be a lot easier to hold, wanting it to be where it's just 2 pawns and 2 pawns versus 1 on one side of the board. There is some accuracy, however, needed on white's part. There is a little trick that black is throwing in at this moment. Rook e6. White is sure to dodge that. And well, at the end of it, we do, as white, manage to get a pair of rooks off the board, and just having a single pawn advantage is not going to be enough to convert this one into a win. 4 games in, 4 draws. Fifth game, however, is where we saw first blood, I guess you could say. The semi-Slav elected by Carlsen, the Marshall Gambit, which really isn't a gambit due to knight c6 on move 6. Bishop d2 on that move 6 would have been a true gambit, but not the case here. And in this one, the queens come off, not without having some structural defect on both sides. White aims at c6, which is a sensitive point. At the end of it, we have a nice move here with b7, making sure the queenside structure on the black's end will be a little bit weakened. White is the side who's really trying to press in this one, looking to get to the 7th rank, looking to now improve on the king position. And black did well to really get that rook on h8 finally working. Some threats are now being generated against white. b3 has pressure. King c3 has was a nice timely move in order for rook b2 to be played. At the end of this one, however, although it is stripped down to a rook position and white having only one pawn plus, that pawn plus that white has is a very significant advantage, because it means that there are now two passed pawns, two passed rook pawns. The a pawn gets tracked down, but black is quickly reminded that there is also a passed h pawn on move 58. After h4, it is Anand who resigns, and this here is the first decisive game of the match. Game 6 was, well, what Anand ended up describing a very heavy blow. We once again see Roy Lopez, and this was a very, very quiet game. One that had, I believe, most people thinking it would turn out to be a draw. But Carlsen continued to fight on in this one, and soon enough we see all minor pieces exchanged in this one, and we're working now with just rooks and queens, some structural defect on the white side, but it shouldn't really be enough to turn it into an advantage. But what we end up having is a material plus on Carlsen's side. Soon enough, okay, a lot of dancing at this point. Soon enough, we end up having just the rooks on the board. Right here, Anand gives up a pawn in order to have a very active rook. h5 is thrown in, giving up another pawn to shatter the structure, and now slowly but surely black is going to now improve the king position. Black gives up not only the b pawn but also the c pawn, and this is a big moment coming up here in the match. After the rook gives a check, king f4 means that it's now the c pawn will be given up. White has connected passed pawns, but black has a very, very dangerous pawn in that of the f pawn, which simply at this point cannot be stopped. And soon enough we end up having, after rook g1, Anand resigning for now the second time, and Carlsen going up by 2 points. And again, Anand later describing this one as a very heavy blow in the match. Game 7, well, Anand having the white pieces. We once again have the Roy Lopez, but now with some twist, grabbing on c6. This turned out to be a very positional battle, and no imbalance with regard to the minor pieces, but rather just the pawn structure. Some activity eventually ensues on the h-file, with it now being peeled open. That is going to be an indication more pieces will be exchanged, the rooks in particular, and sure enough we have both sets of rooks coming off in this one. At the end of it, we end up having the queens and the knights, and not really much to make of this position. Similar to games 1 and 2, we end up having a little back and forth with the knights and the queen here, and this one here ending as a draw. So Anand at this point is certainly running out of time. Game 8 being the next one here, and while this is a very quick game, I believe Carlsen spent about 20 seconds on average per move. We see the Roy Lopez, and this is a very tame line, no structural imbalance, just getting the minor pieces out, and we really get to see highlighted this position stripped to a very simplified position. The kings and pawns alone, no minor pieces, no queens, no rooks. Soon enough, bishops are now off, and with this now sequence of moves, mass exchanges at the end of it with the 4 king and pawn endgame alone. Soon enough, we end up having the king side and the queen side being locked up. No progress to be made. We now turn to game 9. Running out of time at this point is Anand needing to certainly score a win. One of his last games here, potentially playing with the white pieces, and this was a giant battle. We had a big race in this one, the Nimzo Indian, the Camacho variation with f3, and white looking to prep this e4 advance. White is successful in doing that. This knight is a little bit of a nuisance on white's part, being camped out on the queen side, and now here comes a giant avalanche of the white pawns. One other interesting thing to note in this game is that we had the biggest think of the match. After b3, Anand spent about 45 minutes on queen to f4, move 23. And while this knight is now jumping all the way back in order to defend against mate, white is going for it with rook to f4, allowing a second queen to be placed on the board, promotion on b1, but with knight to f1, that turned out to be a very serious blunder. And after the reply, queen to e1, Anand resigned this one as well. Carlsen now up 3 full points in this match, and certainly a very difficult road ahead, nearly impossible task to win the next 3 to force a playoff. Game 10 would turn out to be the last game of the match. Carlsen at this point having 6 points, Anand having 3. We have a Sicilian, Carlsen needing only a draw in order to secure the World Championship. And, well, a very strong grip is placed over d5 in this opening. No imbalance with regard to minor pieces as soon as that light square bishop is exchanged. And there's just the 2 breaks, b5 and d5, to watch out for. Looking for a very simple position. This game, I thought, might have been heading towards... at the beginning of it, I thought we could be seeing a very quick draw, but we had a much bigger fight as soon as there's, for as long as there are knights still on the board. We end up having all major pieces being exchanged. For as long as all knights, or both knights, are still on the board, there's still a lot of calculation needed. So there's a nice king position, and, well, now this knight is getting involved here, trying to go after the black pawns. A great thing here on Carlsen's part. Almost a half hour was spent on knight g8. Why is that the case? Well, because at the end of it, you need to see that you have to give up your knight, and you need to know that you can track down the A and B pawns for black, and just in time be the one who gets a queen first. Of course, black gets a queen as well, but at the end of it, there's not really going to be much to make from this position. And at the end of it, after queen c7, queen b6, without the queens on the board, this game here turns out to be a draw. And with that, Magnus Carlsen becomes the 16th world chess champion, scoring now 6.5 points to 3.5 points.